We got a lot to prove still, right? Like, at the end of the day, we're where we wanted to be or where we thought we would be, but that's it. Right? We still got so it's all about what's in front of us, and we got BC, a football team that really should be undefeated.
I say this is part where we got to do a better job at defending home and defending Scott Stadium. So I think this is a early test for us in this long season. So I think it's very important.
Steve, has that kind of been like the message from Coach Elliott is about defending that home turf?
Yeah, and we haven't done a great job of that. So I know that's a big focus for us these next couple of weeks, and we're gonna stay true to that.
They're coming to take what we want, and we need to be a football team that defends our home stadium. Like, that's really been the message and the motivation. If you want to be honest, like, we have not been good in Scott Stadium under this coaching staff, and I want that to change.
Virginia head coach Tony Elliott and Virginia hoping to change their luck at Scott Stadium under this staff. Hi, I'm Jacquie Franciulli for Wahoo's 24/7, back with another episode of the Good Old Podcast. And you heard it right there from Elliott and some players saying how important it is to win at home. Elliott is making that his main message this week as Virginia prepares for Boston College. Now, before we continue on this episode talking about the Eagles and this upcoming matchup, why don't you go ahead and like this video, like this channel, and also go ahead and leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts so we can help continue on the show. And also, if you're interested in all your Virginia football and basketball and honestly Virginia sports content in general, head over to Wahoo's 24/7 as we continue to cover a lot of Virginia sports and recruiting all in one place. So as you can see, we do have video this week if you're watching on YouTube. The office is not quite done. You can kind of see it through the blur, some of it, and you'll be able to see a little bit more when we have AJ Black on the show, Eagle Insiders publisher, and he'll talk a little bit about Boston College. You'll see a little bit of it because I couldn't keep that blurred when I did that double box, but we're almost ready in the office. Shout out to all the husbands that have wives that give them Pinterest topics and Pinterest boards so that they can do it. So hopefully we're on the sanding, priming, and painting section of the office. So hopefully that will be done by next week. But football, big game for Virginia. We talked about preseason how in the Virginia had the schedule kind of split up in thirds. So the first third they needed to win, we can say like 4 to 5 games. So in the first third they won 3, so they're on their way there, especially when you're looking at bowl eligibility. The second third is also important because 3 of the 4 games are at home compared to 3 out of 4 games on the road in that final third. So you start off with Boston College. It is a winnable game, and Virginia knows this. So what are the big headlines heading into this matchup against a very formidable Boston College team who's coming up some good wins, playing at Florida State and getting the win there, beating Michigan State as well. But then losing a close one to Missouri and then struggling against Western Kentucky when Thomas Castellanos was not able to play. So a team that is 4-1, both of these teams among those that right now are in one of the top in the ACC. So like everyone planned and had their under bingo card. So for Virginia, the big news coming out of last week during the bye week was that Jason Hammond suffered a season-ending injury in that game against Coastal Carolina. He had to have a shoulder surgery, which means he will no longer play this season, which is very unfortunate because he was having a good season. He came onto his own. He worked really hard in the offseason, and he was doing really well in his second season at Virginia. The other big news is that Sage Ennis is also out for the season after re-injuring his knee against Coastal Carolina. Remember, Elliott thought or hoped that it was more of a hyperextension and that he wasn't hurt enough to have long-term injury. Unfortunately, he was. So now you're seeing guys like Dakota Tweedy moving up the depth chart. Dakota moving from wide receiver to tight end. So obviously he knows how to catch the ball. He's a good pass catcher. Now he's just adjusting and learning one of the most difficult positions to learn on the offense when you think of, how much you have to learn compared to like the quarterback, the center, and tight end. Those are probably the 3 most difficult positions on that side of the ball. So Dakota Tweedy is moving up the depth chart. So expect, obviously, Tyler Neville, Sackett Wood, and Dakota Tweedy to have significant reps. And then you might even see John Rogers out there with Takai Kirby also hurt. Virginia playing 12 personnel system, you can probably see them rotate 3 or 4 tight ends. So that is certainly one to watch there with that injury. But good news is that Mikhail Boley is ready to go after not playing this season yet. So he can feature some at left tackle. Obviously, he won't have the game conditioning of some of the other guys there. But when you're dealing with one of the best edge rushers in the game, and when they face against Boston College, you might want to have a guy that's heavily good in a rotation, get those guys healthy, get those guys at least fresher. So you can have him and Jack Whitmer rotate. And obviously, but Jack Whitmer can play right and left. So you can also have him rotate for Blake Steen. And obviously, you also have Jimmy Chris there as well. The good news for Virginia that he's not the only offensive lineman expected back. Ty Furnish is expected back at right guard. Obviously, Virginia missed him if you watched that game against Coastal Carolina. Although they did really good in the run protection and you saw obviously success there. There were times where you did see that Ty Furnish was missed at right guard. And then as far as any other injuries, Charlie Patterson is also available after hurting his ankle and missing a few games there. So he's also available. And at wide receiver, J.R. Wilson is expected to make his debut, or at least be available to make his debut. And then wide receiver Trell Harris is day-to-day. We spoke to a few people. He hasn't practiced it or was limited to practice this week. So not sure how much I will say this day-to-day means he will play on Saturday. Wide receiver is a position that they do have depth. So it could be where they'll hold out on Trey Harris until he is completely ready to play. So those are the key injuries for UVA. But, Boston College is going to be a tough opponent for UVA. Remember, this is the team that Virginia played last year in Boston and was up 21-7 and then took off their foot from the gas. And then Boston College was able to come back in that second half after so many missed opportunities and mistakes. And obviously injuries. If you remember, Dre Walker was hurt in that game after his first career interception. So a lot of moving pieces in that game that led to Virginia losing, and Virginia remembers.
It's like when you're up in a game like that. I mean, you just got to keep going. You can't let off the gas pedal. We just saw it this week. Bama and Georgia game. It's evident. So it doesn't matter who's playing. You just got to come out of halftime, make the necessary adjustments, and you got to keep going.
We let off the gas for sure. That's what it was. I think we started playing too conservative. We thought we had the game won. We didn't finish them off, put our foot on the net.
I saw a team that we just didn't finish, and I think that was a big problem with us last year. And I think you can see this year just a little bit how we've changed that mentality. We're going to finish in the fourth quarter, and we're going to strain all the way through.
I was going to say, in the game against Coastal Carolina, although you could consider it as a rout, you guys continued to push and play aggressively. Is that the different mindset that this team has this year?
Yeah, it's not taking the foot off the gas. We're coming out here to dominate, and when we do that, you see the results we get.
Tony Elliott said, this is the same old Boston College. A physical matchup is expected between both of these guys. And when he's saying same old Boston College, he means that this is a very talented team that could cause some issues for Virginia. Yes, they have a new head coach in Bill O'Brien. You see what he's been able to do, making this team more disciplined. Like Virginia last year, they were the most penalized teams in the country. This year, like Virginia, they're one of the least penalized teams in the country. You also see Bill O'Brien's effect on Thomas Castellanos, the quarterback. This year, he's had 729 yards with 10 TDs, 2 interceptions, and 112 rushing yards and a touchdown. He's been really efficient for Virginia. And if you watch that game against FSU, you also notice that this team can run the football. And obviously we're going to go in more in depth in Boston College, but when you look at BC, the main matchup is going to be control Boston College's ground game and get them off the field. They're a team that can dominate the time of possession. And when you look at their three-headed rushing attack, that is Trayshawn Ward, Kyle Robichaux, and obviously Castellanos, they're going to be able to keep the ball. They are 9th in ACC in rushing yards, and over 60% of their plays are on the ground. When you have those stats, if you're Virginia, offensively, you know that you got to be very efficient. You have to take your advantages in the red zones. You can't have a repeat against Maryland because there's a theory that Boston College is going to stay on the field longer, so you need to take your opportunities when you have them. That means converting on those third downs, not making yourself go on third and long situations, converting those opportunities in the red zones and not turning over the ball. Those are all crucial offensively for Virginia, and defensively, avoid those big plays. Also, keep an eye on Castellanos. He's going to be a player that is going to be one to watch for Virginia, because when you look at Virginia's defense history up until this point, the last 3 years under the staff, a quarterback that plays like Castellanos has been hard to defend. And when you look at what this team did against Florida State, they were able to run up the middle and were able to have a lot of success. I mean, they controlled the pace of that game on the ground. So when you look at that, that is a matchup that if for me, when I was trying to do a prediction for this game, and obviously I will have a prediction later in the show, this is the matchup where I think like Boston College has an edge if Castellanos plays, and it looks like he will play, and that's what AJ will kind of talk a little bit later in the show. That is the main battle, and I think that is one where I'm weary of. The only thing I will say is having the return of Antonio Clary at safety, having him and Jonas Sanker being two of the best tacklers on this team, allows others to push forward a little bit and blitz. So that is definitely something that has helped. So obviously the matchup that we'll be watching will be Cam Robinson. I wouldn't be shocked if he was a spy on Castellanos, but yes, that he will certainly have his hands full there, and the defense will have his hands full with Castellanos. That could be a huge problem for Virginia. On the flip side, Virginia's offensive line will have their hands full too with Donovan Ezeriaku. And I'm so sorry if I butchered his name, but he leads the country with 8 sacks. He leads BC in tackles. He's a first among all defensive linemen in the country. Now, what makes him stand out, and something that, Des Kitchings and Elliott said this week, is that he's a guy who can play both sides, so left and right. So you don't know where he's going to line up. So it's not like you're going to say, hey, the main matchup is, Jack Whitmer, Mikhail Boley on the left side against him, or on the right side, Blake Steen going after him, and most likely Jimmy Chris or Jake Widmer. Again, you don't know, because this guy can line up on both sides. He's one of the best edge rushers in the game. He's having a great season for BC. So that is one of the main matchups, because you want Anthony Calandria to have the time to throw those balls. You want the O-line to able to protect Anthony Calandria. You want them to also give the running backs time to find those holes and get some points, get some yardage on the ground and move those chains, and don't get behind the schedule, so that you can have third and reasonable rather than third and long, which gets you in this kind of this whirlwind of going 3 and out and not able to, and making those big plays or forcing those big plays when you don't have to. So again, it's going to be one of the matchups to watch as well. Obviously, I think offensively, Virginia would like to throw the ball a little bit. I think they can take advantage of Boston College in the air. But again, all comes down to Anthony Calandria having the time to get the ball. But we're going to go into a break here, because on the way back, AJ Black will join the show, and he's going to explain a little bit more on what BC's doing, what the changes has happened with Bill O'Brien. And then also when they came back, we'll discuss a little bit recruiting too, because recruiting is picking up for Virginia. Virginia was on the road last week during the bye week, and seems like those visits paid dividends, because they're expecting a lot of kids on grounds this weekend. And some of those they visited to see a game or two, they're coming. So we'll make sure we'll kind of highlight a few of those visitors as well when we get back. And welcome back to the Good Old Podcast. I'm Jacquie Franciulli for Wahoo's 24/7. And as I mentioned right before the break, we were going to welcome in Eagles Insiders AJ Black. AJ, thank you so much for joining us on the show to kind of break down this game between Virginia and Boston College.
Yeah, Jacquie, thanks for having me on. It's I can't believe we just played again last year, and we're back again talking BC and UVA.
Yeah, I was actually talking to one of the other beat writers who was at that game in Boston College. I will say having that clam chowder in that press box was pretty nice. It kept us pretty warm during that game.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, because I went as a fan for that one. It was really cold and miserable. But that clam chowder, and if you're in the BC press box, you got to have it with the hot sauce. I've never had New England clam chowder. I've lived up here my whole life with hot sauce until they told me to try it. Game changer.
It was actually that was the first thing they recommended when I went to the press box was have some hot sauce with the clam chowder. So it was definitely really good. no clam chowder in this game on Saturday. We'll be in Charlottesville. Um, and this is opportunity for both teams. I mean, when the start of the season, there's a lot of question marks for both Boston College and Virginia. With the ACC, how it is, both of these teams are coming in with some buzz around them, you can say. Well, both of these teams have no losses in the ACC, with Florida State stumbling. Obviously, one of those stumbles was to Boston College. When you look at these wins for the Eagles, I mean, a wins over Florida State, Michigan State, obviously a tighter than they wanted to win over Western Kentucky, but a close loss to Missouri. How can you kind of evaluate this team when you see kind of the breadth of their resume right now?
So Bill O'Brien and his staff are, obviously well-established coaches, and they've done this for years. They've, worked with the Texans and with Penn State. So he's got experience, and the thing that strikes to me is the attention to detail and the discipline of this team. BC went 93rd in the country last year in penalties per game. This year they're third or second, excuse me. So they're not doing things to bite themselves in the butt. The other big difference to me is the defense. The defense last year was 110th. They were dead last in the country in tackles for loss. They were second to last in sacks. BC now has the leading, Donovan Nazaraku leads the country in sacks. Big difference there. So it's all those little things, and BC just doesn't beat themselves. That's the big thing. Jeff Hafley, Steve Adazio, Frank Spaziani, you go back 15 years with BC, and you had coaches that when you could win games, they would win games, but it seemed like it was always finding a way to lose. That was always the kind of the motto with the fan base, was like, this is a team that finds a way to lose. It feels very different right now. They find ways to win. 2 weeks in a row that they were behind going into halftime and come back to win. Even one without your quarterback. Like Thomas Castellanos didn't play against Western Kentucky. That's a big piece about that, right? Is that you had Grayson James, your backup, going, and you're still able to win. That's a big deal. And so it's this culture that Bill O'Brien has installed. It's a very pro style, mentality and playbook. And I think it's paying dividends with, 4 wins out of 5 so far for the Eagles.
Yeah, you know what I think about is that both of these teams had kind of the same storylines heading into last year. They were both heavily penalized. They were both kind of hurting themselves, making those errors, costing them games. I mean, we could just look at this game last year. In the first half, Boston College was beating themselves. In the second half, Virginia beat themselves. Obviously, they were up 21-7 at the half, and then Boston College came back. So you could see the improvements of Boston College, but in the same vein, Virginia improved much the same manner when you look at they're one of the least penalized teams as well in the country, which is opposite of what we saw last year in Boston College. Now, one thing that I find is it's going to be interesting to watch is basically the personnel for both teams are quite similar from what they were last year.
Yep.
Now, obviously, the key matchup for me when it looks at Boston College offense and Virginia's defense is obviously, can they contain Thomas Castellanos? That was a key for them last year, and obviously they failed to do that in that second half. And Virginia has had some bad history when it comes to quarterbacks like Castellanos. And one thing that I watched the Florida State matchup between BC and the Noles, and it was their three-headed rushing attack. The way they were able to dominate the middle and go up against those linebackers from Florida State really stood out to me with Treshaun Ward, Kai Robichaux, and I'm sorry if I butchered his name.
Nope, you got it.
And Castellanos, like I think most 65% of their plays are on the ground, and they were able to control time of possession, get up and down the field pretty easily. And I think that's going to be the biggest challenge. How have you seen this offense kind of materialize under Bill O'Brien and kind of become that more run heavy type of offense this season?
Yeah, it's been interesting because you see different versions of this offense depending on who they've played. So the as you mentioned in the opener, they just ran the ball down Florida State's throat. They basically put their will down on the Noles. They ended up scoring, I was at 31 points, I believe it was, and they could have scored 40 plus. I mean, they need in the moment of Florida State is just down. BC kneels it at like the 5-yard line, which is crazy because if the Noles had the ball and they were winning like that, they would have ran it right down BC's throat. But different teams, right? So You have games like that. You see Duquesne. Duquesne, I'm not even going to count because it's what it is. BC just, they did whatever they wanted anyway they wanted to against Duquesne. But against Missouri, Missouri was able to bottle up BC's running game. They ran for 48 yards in that game. They weren't able to move the ball at all. But Thomas Castellanos was able to throw it. He threw for 250 yards, I believe, in that game. He also threw 2 interceptions. But that game, I thought, was very different. And then you go to Michigan State, and it's hard to gauge that game because it was pouring through that whole game. So the first half, they tried running the ball again. They still couldn't run it. And then they go back to the air, and Thomas Castellanos throws for like 150 yards in the second half, and they win. Last week, you have no quarterback. You have Thomas Castellanos is out. We don't know why. Um, and you have Grayson James out there. He looks he really struggled to start that game off, and I think the moment caught him, and it took him until the fourth quarter for him to actually settle down. They were able to run the ball more then. That looked more like what you were just saying, like that physical run game. It just took them a while to get it going. I'm not sure what their goal is with this offense. Like, because it seems like it's been here, there, and everywhere. Like, kind of like you've seen some passing, you've seen some running. I think O'Brien likes the style of that they can control the clock. I think that was what Jeff Halfley liked too. But I know he wants to throw the ball more. He said, and this is kind of something that shocked me when he said it, was that he not only wants to have an offense that can win them games, but he wants to get an offense that can keep people interested in BC football, which to me means he doesn't want to do ground and pound. He doesn't want to do 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Um, and so I think he wants Castellanos to throw the ball more. It hasn't just happened as much as you would expect yet. This is going to be a really interesting game because my co-writer Mitch Wolf, who's a film nut, he's been watching and going, man, I feel like BC's been holding back part of their playbook based off of what I saw at practice. So he's expecting something else more from them, and I'm not sure what that's going to look like. I imagine it'll be more in the passing game. As long as Castellanos is completely healthy, which he looked at practice this week, I'm not 100% sure where what the deal was or what happened. They're very, very guarded on that. But if he can throw it, I think that's kind of where they're going to try to push a little bit more. But I think if things don't work, they're more than happy just to run the ball.
That's interesting to kind of hear that because I feel like Virginia. I mean, granted, at Coastal Carolina they were able to hold Coastal Carolina pretty much on the ground. That was something that was a main worry heading in there, but they held Ethan Vasco pretty handily down, even though he's a physical runner. That's interesting because that they're trying that you think that possibly will try to passing attack since I think Virginia's secondary, especially their safeties, is probably one of their strengths
Yep.
in their defense. Although you do have Cam Robinson in that linebacker position, so that is definitely someone that I feel like could be one of the you kind of put him as a spy if you want to on Castellanos. Usually, I wanted to talk to you about him because obviously his status was up in the air coming into this week. But according to ESPN, he's the second highest rated QB in the ACC, seventh in the country. He's had 729 yards with 10 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 112 rushing yards, and a touchdown. He's definitely a dynamic player, and he makes this team go. But how have you? Because obviously Virginia fans saw what he could do last year. How has he kind of grown under Bill O'Brien? Because I remember during media day in Charlotte heading into the season, he said he learned a lot already from Bill O'Brien, and his game has developed. Where have
Yep.
you seen that develop?
Being able to watch him at practice has been a big key. And honestly, this is just a side note. The previous staff, Jeff Halfley's practices were completely closed, so we weren't even able to watch anything that they did. So it's been an actual breath of fresh air from Bill O'Brien that he actually lets us in and lets us watch what's going on. So watching Castellanos this year, based off of what I saw in the film last year, and watching him when he was live, all the things that make a quarterback, I think are the things that he's improving upon. Like last year, he would have his moments. He had a couple moments against Virginia, but I'm thinking back to like Georgia Tech and Louisville, where he threw for 300 yards plus, like where he could find things and get things going. But there were times too where you just watched him and you're like, what did he see? Like, there was no one in that area. And that's only happened once this year. One interception he tried hard to throw it against Mizzou and it just didn't work. But he's only really thrown one really bad interception. He had 14 interceptions last year, so he's in a very different spot than he was last year. And I think, the ability to read defenses, the ability to, not force things, not do things that he are outside of what he should be able to do. I think that they've taught him a lot of that. His footwork, like he's able to climb in the pocket, which last year it was make one read, run, make one read, run. That was his thing, right? He does his progressions now, and it's very different. It's interesting to watch him. He'll still run it. I mean, he's still, he'll make his, especially if things are just falling apart, he'll take it and go. But I've noticed him more trusting his arm and what he can do than we have in years past. And so I think that's a big thing. And now the big piece that he still, I think, could improve upon, and the coaching staff keeps bringing it up, is that he needs to stop looking for the home run ball because he continually looks for bigger passes when there's underneath stuff. And I mean, you mentioned his rating, like I think he's second or third in the country in EPA ratings per play. It's because he goes for monster plays every time he's out there, and he hits a lot of them. But I think, when you're playing a decent team, you got to find underneath stuff too. And because that's the stuff that if you're forcing it, you're going to get picked off. And he still he doesn't do it as much as he should. His check down basically is his legs. So he doesn't use the guys that are out there. And I know Bill O'Brien has stressed that he needs to be able to do that at times too. But overall, he's seeing the field better. He's feeling it more. And he's more of a leader out there. He's not just a running back that can throw the ball. He's a quarterback out there.
Yeah, he certainly seems, I guess, like you said, more mature as the leader of the offense.
Yep.
Definitely seems more command. Like I said, I watched that game against Florida State. It was definitely a different Castellanos watching him against the Knowles than I remember him watching against Virginia even last year. And that's even saying that he was really great in that second half to kind of lead BC back. And then on the other side, you already mentioned him, Donovan Izriaku. He's one of the best edge rushers Virginia has faced so far this season. As you said, he leads the country with 8 sacks. Virginia had 11 sacks last year. So he's already almost outpaced UVA's number of sacks just last season. I feel like what makes him special is you don't know where he will line up. What have you seen from him and what changed to lead to this productivity?
I think, yeah. So what do you see? He's a guy, I think Bill O'Brien just mentioned today too, that, you can get him and line him up, back almost like a linebacker. You can have him on the edge. You can have him, 3-point stance. You can do all sorts of different stuff with him. And the things that have changed, I think, is the defense itself. Talking to the players all summer long, and asking them, because I was just curious, like, with a new defensive coordinator, a new system, like, what's the difference? And they all say almost universally, they all say it just allows us to make plays. It doesn't make us think. And I think Jeff Halfley's defenses were a lot of, if this happens, then this, and it, football is a game of seconds where if you flinch, a big play can happen. And so I think the players were just thinking too much. And he was one of the guys that ended up doing that. This year, even with teams double teaming him, it doesn't matter. It's crazy because he had only, I think his 2 sacks, I think he had 2.5 sacks last year. I think two of them came against Virginia. But he, you watch him out there. It's been a while since I've seen a BC defender be a game changer. Like, if you had decent defenders here at BC for a couple years, here and there. But this, if you watch the Western Kentucky game last week, he had 3 sacks. He had the strip fumble that caused, for Western Kentucky to fumble at like the 10-yard line. It ended up being the game-winning touchdown. He was all over the place. He's fast. I talked to a couple BC linemen who were taught, and actually a tight end today, and they're just talking about how hard it is to cover him in practice. He knows what's going to happen. He's you try to, like, just know what Jeremiah Franklin was talking about this today, their tight end. He's like, that he knows what you're going to do, and you just got to pray that you're going to have help to stop him. He's just that good. I, I think that he's got speed. He's got deep. He doesn't have great size. I think that's what's going to kill him in the NFL draft. But he's fast off the line, and he's got a good set of moves for a defensive lineman that helps him get to the quarterback.
Yeah, when I was trying to look at the key matchups leading into this game, I've had, him circled. I had Iziraku going after Virginia's offensive tackles as one of the main matchups to watch, especially with Virginia's Mikhail Boley, the preseason starter, expected to be available this weekend at left tackle. Obviously, Jack Whitmer is also expected to play there, kind of helping each other out since Mikhail Boley is just coming back from injury, so conditioning is not up to par. And then on the other side, you have Blake Steen and possibly Jimmy Chris. So I think the tackles versus him is going to be a key matchup to give Anthony Calandria enough time to find those open mans to get the ball to the receivers like Malachi Fields for Virginia. So that's one of the key matchups to me. And on the other side for me is obviously Cam Robinson and trying to keep his eyes on Castellanos, kind of stay disciplined, minding your B gaps if you're Virginia football, because that you don't want to be put in a situation that they were last year. In your eyes, AJ, what are the matchups that Boston College will be keying on in order for them to win?
I think Anthony Calandria is going to be a big one, and how they're able to minimize what he can do. Against Western Kentucky last week, and not even really a mobile quarterback. That first half, BC's defense was just not they started off really slow. They let up 180 yards, I believe it was, in the first half, 2 touchdowns. They had real trouble getting off the field. The Hilltoppers were great on fourth down. I look at a guy like Calandria, and BC against Anthony Childs the week before, just he's another mobile quarterback. They just weren't there were times where they had third down and long, and he'd run it for 15 yards. So I'm interested to see how the linebacking core is able to slow him down, how they're able to, get off the field. I think that's going to be a big key. On the offensive side of the ball, I'm looking at like Jonas Sacker and the safeties, and looking at how if they're going to be able to make some plays against BC's quarterback. Against I'm assuming it's going to be Castellanos, um, because BC's been really good with ball security, especially with interceptions. That's the kind of stuff that will kill them, and it killed them against Missouri. So if they can keep the interceptions and turnovers down, um, that's going to be big. And I think the last piece is can BC capitalize when they need to, because you've seen BC do things when they need to, but they've also, if you watched a lot of these games, BC's left a lot of points off the board. Like they've won them, but you look at Michigan State, they fumbled inside the red zone. Trayshawn Ward, they had the ball at the 1 yard line with third down, and they couldn't get the ball in twice. That happened. Last week against Western Kentucky, they had an issue where they were moving down the field, and they could have easily tied the game. And Lewis Bond made some really crazy jump move where he tried to do too much and he fumbled. So there's been some mistakes, and it's killed momentum. I think can be seen prevent themselves from shooting themselves in the foot. I think that's going to be a big one too.
Yeah, I feel like clean football and complementary football, as all good coaches like to talk about, I think it'll be crucial for Virginia. No mistakes on special teams. Make sure you're not penalizing, and also obviously don't turn over the ball. That's been an issue for Virginia this season. So they obviously don't want to turn over the ball, and also force those turnovers. So we're just gonna ask you one more question, AJ. Gonna put you on the spot a little bit.
Sure.
What is your prediction for this matchup?
Ah, you got me on this one. So, I I saw the odds when Castle when practices were closed, and we didn't know if he was going to play, and I know Virginia was a favorite. Um, I think BC is going to have an edge on this one. I do. I'm going to go with BC winning like 28-21. I'm going to go with something like that. I think BC's got a little bit of an edge on some of the bigger areas, and I think they're going to probably slow the game down a little bit, and I think that would favor them more if they try to drag it out a little bit.
Yeah, that was the one thing that I was worried in this matchup was Boston College's ability to control the time of possession and stay on the field. That's definitely something where,
Yep.
especially with the way Virginia played in some of those games, apart from Coastal Carolina, they're much more in the big play than get off the field type of offense and struggled a bit in the red zone until that Coastal Carolina game. So that's definitely my worry. I am giving the edge to Virginia just because they are the home team. I think,
Yep.
again, last year these two teams matched up well together and some of the same personnels are back. The only thing is on defense, Antonio Clary was an injured player last year, and Virginia was facing Boston College for a lot of true freshmen. Like Dre Walker was making his,
Yep.
one of his few starts and got hurt right after his first career interception. So Virginia was dealing with a lot of injuries. So I'm giving Virginia the edge just because of that, where the matchup was there for them last year and they just couldn't take it. So, but my scoreline is pretty much the same as yours, except I'm saying 27-21.
Got it.
So about the same. I just giving the home team the edge this time around. I think it's going
That's
to be
fair.
a close game. But so AJ, thank you so much for joining us and kind of breaking down what to expect from Boston College.
Hey, thank you for having me on, Jackie. Appreciate it.
All right, awesome. Let me stop recording. Well, thanks again for AJ to joining on the show. It's always nice to have the different perspective on the teams because I can tell you some things about Boston College just by watching them or just by reading what, guys who cover Boston College day in and day out do. But it's always great to have their perspective because obviously they know what more of the team than I do. So it's good to have them, just kind of break down the game as we kind of prepare for Virginia. And like I said prior to the break, Virginia's hosting several recruits. They're actually sold out of tickets for visiting recruits. So a lot of guys are expected to be on grounds for this game, including a top 24/7 lineman, one of the best linemen in the state of Virginia is expected. Another one is also expected, another big offensive line target that we're looking to confirm. He is expected according to a source, but we have yet to confirm as of Thursday. So several different in-state players are expected. Damon Ferguson, who is a Maryland DB, who we reported on Thursday, he's going to visit Virginia. He received a visit from Keith Gaither, who went to Maryland last week during the bye week. He's also expected to come. He visited Virginia earlier in the fall as well. So there's a lot of guys who are making their second visit this fall, also coming on ground. So it's an in-state flavor. A lot of kids from the Richmond area will be there. And this is a great opportunity for Virginia to not only build momentum on the field and have their best start in the ACC since 2019, but really gain some momentum and footholds in the state of Virginia as far as recruiting. Because yes, to 2025, they're doing a solid job when you see what their commitments look like. And most likely they're somewhat close to being finished in the high school front, although they just secured an official visitor for their game against SMU, a defensive lineman, which is what it is expected, considering that they still are looking for a defensive lineman in this class. The defensive line out of Texas is coming to visit for that game in SMU. But at the same time, they're going to leave some openings for guys in the portal. That's the way the business is right now. But they're also moving forward in 2026. And that's what you're seeing. I mean, they already picked up their first commitment in the Eli Hamrick, the 2026 quarterback in the class. And you're going to see more movement in that class moving forward. And you're already seeing it, but who's visiting Virginia the first couple games here? And you're going to see more of these big recruiting weekends as the season goes on. And if you continue to win, recruits will come. So a lot of big things happening for Virginia football. A lot of big things happening on Saturday on grounds at noon. Virginia will face off against Boston College. The game will be on ACC Network. And then at 6 p.m. at the JPJ, Virginia women's will hold their blue and white Pepsi scrimmage. And then the men followed after that. So I will be at Scott Stadium from the morning and throughout the game. And then I will be also covering both of those scrimmages at the JPJ. And then on Sunday and Monday, we'll get those recruit reactions. So a lot of content is coming on Wahoo's 24/7, and a lot of coffee will be consumed. So expect all those contents coming. We'll try to, I spoke to Brian Doan. I'm trying to have him come on the show at some point in the next week or two so we can talk a little bit more in depth on recruiting. He's actually in the state of Virginia this week, so we can get a little more perspective of what he's been hearing around the Virginia and the Commonwealth about Virginia recruiting. So that is something that we're also expected. But that's it for this week's podcast. Again, Virginia looking to make their best start in the ACC against Boston College on Saturday, and we'll have full coverage on Wahoo's 24/7. But I hope you guys have a good rest of your Thursday evening and the rest of the weekend, and we'll be right back here next week.